Hello, and welcome to this overview of the FCP planning process. My name is Josh Bennett, and I'm part of the global team that supports church partnership. In this video, I'll introduce you to the FCP planning process, and I'll explain each stage of planning with the church at a high level. In the future, we'll be making other videos that describe each stage in greater detail. For now, let's start with the program cycle. FCP planning is an important part of the program cycle, which you may have heard the organization talking about. Put simply, a program cycle is a management framework to guide the design, implementation, and refinement of program. It provides a natural rhythm for learning and improving. Now, the idea of a program cycle is not new. These activities have been happening at the national office and church for a very long time. What is new is how we do these steps, with a greater focus on reflection and learning, and how we better integrate the church and national office program cycles together. We'll be learning more about program cycle through tests in Tanzania, and more on integration between national and church cycles will be coming in the future. In this video, we want to give you a deeper look at how Compassion helps the church do needs assessment and planning. The FCP planning process is how Compassion supports frontline church partners to design and plan their local ministry to children and youth. This is a participatory process that encourages the church to engage children and youth, families, and the community in identifying the most critical needs in their context, and to do evidence-based planning of the interventions they'll use to release children from poverty. This process has been developed through months of testing, learning, and refinement during the program redesign proof of concept phase. The process was co-designed with frontline church partners and national offices, receiving direct input and feedback from them. And it's our desire that we continue to learn and improve this process with a developmental mindset as it's used by more and more national offices. What you are about to see is both a work in progress and also a resource that is ready to use today. Let's walk through each stage of the process to understand what church participants are doing and what value it brings to the church. The first stage of the FCP planning process is needs identification. During this stage, church participants identify the needs, challenges, and assets in the lives of children and youth. They gather information about their community from home visits and focus groups. They review progress measures on child and youth outcomes. The PF and other church-facing team members help them to understand and interpret national data from Compassion or from the local government. The value to the church in this stage is that in addition to FCP leadership, church staff, and congregation, this stage also invites participation from children, youth, parents, and other local stakeholders to build a shared understanding of the needs. When leaders are more involved in designing the plan, the result is increased church ownership of the program. And when stakeholders feel that their needs have been represented, they are more motivated to be part of the solution. The second stage of the FCP planning process is prioritization and analysis. During this stage, church participants decide which needs and challenges are the most important for them to address, and build a shared understanding of what is causing the challenges. The value for the church in this stage is empowering the church to focus on the child and youth needs that are most important in their context. This stage also helps to build confidence that they have correctly identified the causes of the challenges they face. The third stage of the FCP planning process is intervention selection. During this stage, church participants describe the change they hope to see and the positive enablers that may already exist in their context. Then the PF and church-facing team help the church to choose the interventions that will best address the prioritized needs of children and youth, and that are practical for the church to implement. The value for the church in this stage is confidence that they have selected the right interventions for the need, for their context, and for their maturity as a church. The fourth stage of the FCP planning process is implementation planning. During this stage, church participants plan how they will implement the interventions that they have selected for their program. They set milestones, plan key tasks that need to be done, and identify who will be responsible for them. The value for the church in this stage is clear answers to who, what, when, and where, the details of how they will prepare for and implement the interventions they've chosen to meet child and youth needs. The fifth stage of the FCP planning process is measurement planning. Now, remember when I said that the process is a work in progress? This is an area where there are exciting tools being developed. We are working on an intervention catalog to support the church. In this intervention catalog, each intervention would be defined. Each intervention would contain evidence-based materials for implementation, like curriculum. And each intervention would have a set of measurements for success. When that catalog is complete, much of measurement planning will take place earlier, during intervention selection. Until that point, this stage serves as a place for the church to plan how they will monitor progress and collect information. The value for the church is empowering them with the information and processes that will help them to learn and ultimately improve their ministry to children and youth. The sixth and final stage of the FCP planning process is budgeting. During this stage, participants build an annual budget for their plan. They estimate the costs of their planned activities, consider their local resources, and compassion support to build their budget. The value for the church in this stage is shared understanding and ownership for how they will use their own resources and external support to accomplish their child and youth ministry goals. Not all of the planning steps need to be done to the same depth on an annual basis. Up until now, Compassion's process has been to help the church create an annual plan for ministry, what we call the partner plan. The new FCP planning process goes beyond this to help the church create both a long-term strategic plan and an annual implementation plan. The first three stages are part of the church's strategic plan. This empowers the church to set long-term priorities and to choose interventions that will be part of their ongoing ministry, or to plan for a sequence of interventions that might need to happen over the course of several years. These three steps can be part of a long-term strategic plan. Implementation planning and budgeting are part of the church's annual implementation plan. These stages give the church a detailed plan for the tasks and activities they will execute on any given year. Measurement planning is unique. Measures, targets, and indicators of success should be a part of the church's long-term plan, while the annual plan should include how they plan to monitor implementation and their rhythms for learning and development. Finally, there is a key process that bridges the long-term strategic plan and the annual plan. The Partnership Reflection and Development Tool helps the church to assess, learn, and improve their ownership capacity and resources in order to achieve their ministry goals. The FCP planning process depends on some key factors that will contribute to the successful adoption of program redesign. Each one of these key success factors is described in greater detail on the Program Redesign SharePoint site, but let's take a moment to talk about three of them. First, we want to approach planning with the church with a developmental mindset. We want to help the church have programs in which the long-term effect is greater self-reliance and an increasing ability of children and their families to meet their own needs. And planning itself is a developmental activity. Planning builds a deeper understanding of the needs, and it gives participants confidence to take action. With that understanding, When planning, we encourage the church to go beyond church staff and to also invite participation from youth, families, church congregations, and the wider community. The second key success factor that I want to highlight is evidence-based practice. Compassion is committed to effectiveness. In terms of planning, this means that we use our global and national experience to help the church to select the program interventions that have the best evidence for being effective in their context. It means that we help the church to think through how best to implement and monitor those interventions. And finally, being evidence-based also means that we are always assessing whether the interventions being used are having the desired results. And when they aren't, we are intentional about learning and constantly improving. The final key success factor I will highlight is implementation of church-facing teams. The FCP planning process cannot rest on the PF alone. The PF can lead facilitation with each church, but they're not an expert in all things. Program support specialists play a critical role in the planning process. They provide critical data during needs identification. They may be needed to support root cause analysis so that interventions are addressing the cause of problems rather than the symptoms. And they are vital to the process of good intervention selection and design. The national office must have an effective church-facing team if the planning process is going to be successful. Thank you for watching this video on the FCP planning process. We hope it serves you well, and God bless.